What is it? Do we need this?
Just in case they ask you not in English.
Okay.
Vale. Hola, buenos días.
Hi, good morning and welcome to the new pre-conference of the presentation of the films that form part this year of the official section in the San Sebastian International Film Festival. We want to present Hard Truths, which is the new film by Mike Leigh. And to present the film, we've got a significant part of the team. Let me introduce the far end of the panel. We have Georgina, Lowe, who's the producer by Thinman Films, the actress Marianne Jean-Baptiste, the director Mike Leigh, who's the director and also the screenplay writer, and also the executive producer Javier Mendez. Apart from this, in the front row, we have Laura Fernández Espeso, who's the CEO of Media Pro Studio and also producer of the film. As we have a lot of people attending the press conference, let's open up the QA for the journalists. If you deem, here's the first one over here. I hope you can see who it is. There we go. Hi, good morning. Congratulations for the film. I liked it very much. I would like to ask you, what is it like working with the actors? I'd like to ask you, Mr. Leigh and Marianne, I'd also like you to tell us, how do you develop this such powerful character? And also, it's quite curious, the film in Spanish is called Mi única familia, it's Hard Truths in English, which is completely different. What do you think about the title in Spanish? Because My única familia means in Spanish, my only family, okay?
Well, I trust my colleagues here in Spain who tell me that Hard Truths does not translate into Spanish very comfortably. And in fact, the worry would be that if you translated the title literally, nobody would go and see the film. So I respect the title that has been created for the Spanish release, and that's all I have to say about it. And your other question was?
Developing the character.
About the process with working with the actors.
Oh. Well, the truth is that you couldn't make a film like Hard Truths without the most fantastic, brilliant actors. These actors that you've seen here, you see in this film, like all the actors that I work with, they are character actors. They're actors who don't just play themselves, don't just perform their own narcissism. They actually are really good at and want to and are passionate about making characters that are like real people out there in the street. And Marianne Jean-Baptiste is not only no exception, but is one of the greatest of such actors. So for me, working with these actors is a joy and a delight and a privilege and is a creative, rich adventure. And hopefully that in some way translates itself onto what you see on the screen.
Performance. How do you prepare for a performance like that, and how do you wash it off of you afterwards?
Okay, so the first, thank you. And we spend a lot of time rehearsing. We develop the character from scratch and just keep building and building until, you know, you have what you finally see in the film. I'd say watching it back, as Mike said, as character actors, you are almost looking at somebody else. You're watching someone that you're very fond of do their thing on screen.
If we developed the character together, but if I started from the premise of the idea of the kind of person that Pansy is. And I found an actress who was like Pansy. It would be a nightmare and we'd never make the film. I mean, you know, the great thing is that here is Marianne JEAN-BAPTISTE, who has got a great sense of humour and is a very generous and open and passionate person, who is able to create somebody like Pansy with total accuracy. But she is not Pansy.
Conchita, aquí una pregunta.
Hi, good morning. I'd like to ask Mike Leigh whether this leading role, she's the reflection of the tough moments we're living in at present. And Marianne, what was it to come back to work with Mike again so many years after?
Ah, wow. Well, I guess it's just like riding a bicycle, isn't it? After you haven't been on it for a while, you get on and you pedal a bit, and then you start balancing, and it's fine. It was a gift to work with Mike again. I don't know of anybody who works like him. He loves actors and supports them. He's extremely funny and nurturing, actually. Yeah, very nurturing.
What do you mean?
He pushes you in a very interesting way. You don't feel at the time that you're being pushed or challenged, but you are. And I feel like I'm gushing. But yeah, there's no other way for me to work, really.
As to the first part of your question, I must say, if I'm honest, it hadn't occurred to me till you asked the question that Pansy is, in some way, a function or a symbol of the hard times that we're living in. Because I actually think, if I'm honest, that the condition of the world of these characters, Pansy's condition, Pansy's issues, these are universal. I don't think that they are special to the times we're in. I think these are universal, it's part of the universal human condition. So I think that's the answer to your question.
Hay aquí una pregunta.
Yes, there's a question here.
Hi, two questions here. First to Mr. Mike Leigh. Here. I always admire the way you edit your films, and in this case you had Tanya Redding, if I'm not wrong. Could you say a little bit about your work with your...
Sorry, hold on. Say the last thing again. I didn't...
Sorry, I said, I always admire the way you edit your films, the editing process. Yes, and I would like to understand the process of work with Tanya Redding in this film. And to Marianne, your acting is absolutely amazing. I think we got impressed by Pansy through her words, but the silences are devastating. What could you tell me about the silence, the importance of silence to build a character like that?
You go first.
Okay. I'm not sure that I was entirely aware of those silences. I think when you're in the character, you are just in it, and you are reacting to what you are getting. I think that she was all or nothing, to use a title from one of Mike's films. When one really has to sort of be aware is when she stops speaking, because she goes and goes and goes for so long. And so when she really starts to reflect is when she gets very quiet. But I don't know, I mean, I can't say that it was so deliberate on my part.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just to continue the answer to that question, I think the important thing is that this is about creating organic reality. So whether there is talking going on or silences, pauses, or a lot of action, it's all the same, it's all continuous reality. So we don't think in a kind of schematic way about this is silence, this is not silence. It's what's going on. So I think that's the answer to your question. So in a way, the silence that you're referring to is not a kind of self-conscious imagery or a self-conscious motif of some kind. As to the first part of your question, I mean, again, there's not much I can say that isn't kind of normal about working with the editors. I think you're asking about the editing of the film. We prepare a lot. So what we shoot, and in a way, what I'm going to say next slightly relates to what I've just said about the silences, that we shoot material that is very organic and solid. So we shoot quite a lot. We don't shoot massive amounts. I'm not one of those filmmakers who shoots loads and loads and loads of footage just to see what we can take to the edit, to the cutting room. It's very distilled and precise. The variations, the subtleties, are within the nuances of performance rather than random things that may happen. And so what we take to the edit, to the cutting room, is organic and solid, and it really is about refining it and refining it. That is, apart from the fact that it's a very pleasurable part of the process, it really is just about that, really.
And he mentioned Tanya's name.
Yes, Tanya Reddin. This is the first film cut by a younger editor called Tanya Reddin, who is brilliant and has a great deal of experience. A lot of my films over the years were cut by a man called John Gregory, who died, sadly, of stomach cancer a couple of years ago. The important thing about everybody that I collaborate with is that they're each bringing their own creative vision to the thing. I mean, I don't like working with the kind of editor who simply wants to follow your instructions to the letter and doesn't want to make a creative contribution of his or her own. And the editors I've worked with, including not least Tanya Reddin, do precisely that. So there's input from the editor, though in the end, of course, it's down to what I feel is right.
Hay aquí una pregunta.
There's another question. Hi. First of all, I'm very happy to see you work together after almost 20 years since Secrets and Lies. There's been a kind of parallelism between both stories that I've seen upon the difficulty we have to communicate with our beloved ones. So therefore, even it's easier to talk to a stranger than to talk to our own family. I'm not too sure whether that's done intentionally, and I'm surprised that even 20 years later, after that first film, now it's even more difficult to communicate to one's family. Thank you very much.
If I'm honest, I don't know that I understand the question.
Yes, no, at these times. Well,
Can you put the question
yes.
in very simple terms?
Sí, puede. I feel that there's a kind of relationship between Secrets and Lies and this film, Hard Truths. So, and how it's tough, so quite often, to open up ourselves to communicate with our family. I'm not too sure whether this relationship is intentional, and I'm also surprised that, albeit 20 years have gone by, it's even more difficult to communicate with our beloved ones or family nowadays.
Is it? I mean, I'm not sure. I frankly am not sure that it is any more or less difficult. I mean, you know, I was born in the war and I grew up in the 1940s and 50s. I grew up in a world where honest communication amongst families was rare. Which may explain why I make these films. I don't really know. I mean, in a way, I sort of am inclined to return to what I was just saying a few moments ago, which is about the universal condition, really. And I don't know, I mean, if you are positing the notion that it is harder to communicate within families now than it was, if that's true, and I don't think this film deals with this particularly in any way, it's because of the internet and, you know, kids being locked into the world of the screen and things. But I mean, that may relate to Moses, the son in this film, but I don't really think that the lack of communication is actually what this is, and it being special to the 21st century is really what this film is about. And actually, when you look at Chantal and her daughters and their communication, that's a very open and very modern, but open and communicative kind of relationship. So I think those are my thoughts about your very esoteric question.
I mean, Pansy's very communicative.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, it's true. She does communicate to people what she feels.
She does.
Yeah. Next question.
Aquí hay una pregunta.
Yes, there's a question here. Hi. A question for Mike Leigh. At the beginning of the film, in the first part, and where we show Marianne in a lot of situations trying to relate to people and we see how she is, the audience laughed quite a lot because did you expect that reaction? Was that your objective, that the audience understand the film as a comedy? Was that intentional?
Life is a comedy. Life is ridiculous. You're ridiculous. So, you know, I think it's very sad, and I think it's very funny, because that's what life is. So when people laugh, that's why. And then slowly the laughter dies away, but it's not that it's stopped being anything, it's still real. So far as I'm concerned, the main thing is that it's real and that you relate to it. But as I say, life, can you all put your hand up if you've never laughed at a funeral? Thank you. Next question.
Una pregunta allí.
Yes, there's another question. Hi. I had a question as regards to what you've just said about the decision. ¿Dónde está? Oh, at the back there in the white on the left. There he is. He's standing up now. Okay. As regards to this last question about the decision of concentrating the most intense scenes, or shall we say, or that can be interpreted as comical at the beginning of the film, and then the most dramatic or most intimate ones later on, instead of a classic staging and alternating intense moments with more comedy-like. How did you make the decision? And also to portray your role, Marianne, it's for both of you. When you portrayed your role, there was a first part which is very intense, and a second part which is much more subtle, vis-a-vis the portrayals of the character, and as well as the story itself. Thank you.
If I'm honest, I've never really planned or designed or constructed the film in the simple schematic way that you're assuming I did. The things that happen in the early part of the film are all about establishing the world, establishing the problem, establishing the characters, the relationships, and then the latter part of the film, obviously, is about digging into those issues and in some way investigating them. So the fact that the early part of the film seems like seems that it's designed as a kind of comedy and the latter part less so, it's not about the comedy or the seriousness or the tragedy. It's about it comes naturally out of the nature of what happens. So I haven't really planned it in the way that you assume I have. It's just that the storytelling, it demands constructing it the way it is. And that inevitably, when, you know, in the latter part of the film, it's obvious that we are digging into questions about Pansy's condition, her issues, what she remembers, what her problems are, what she feels. And that is what it's about. It isn't about a kind of schematic comedy first, tragedy second plan. That's nothing to do with it. That's a kind of Hollywood sort of perspective on it, really. What was your question?
What was my question?
What was her question?
The question was along the lines of that when portraying your character, for example, I'm not too sure how the order of the shoot went, but those first scenes were comical or more intensive, in order for you to understand, and more intimism and more control in the later scenes. So basically, I think he's saying, how did you go from one to the other and how that was shot, if you catch it?
Well, as Mike said, I mean, we went in order, and as the story developed, we just went where it went. You know, she encountered all these different people. You got to see who she was. And then you have this moment whereby she has to look at herself when she goes to the graveside. And then it shifts quite naturally and organically. I think, as Mike was saying, it doesn't work in the formulaic way of the sort of 10-page surprise, and then, you know, you get the obstacle thrown in, and then they overcome whatever they're supposed to overcome by page 40 of the script. He doesn't work in that way. So, you know, I don't know if that helps to answer your query, but it's very organic.
I don't think you could arrive at this film with those kind of precepts and notions, or indeed with a conventional script to start with. We'd start with no script, and we build the film as part of making the film. And it's, as Marianne says, it's completely organic and about the truth about what's going on.
Hay una pregunta aquí atrás.
There's another question back here.
For Marianne JEAN-BAPTISTE, you earned 2 nominations with Secrets and Lies for BAFTAs and Oscars. So considering your new character is such a strong one, do you think this could be a winner? Or what do you expect from award season starting from here, from San Sebastian?
I think it's all very exciting, and anything's possible. I just think that being able to work in this way is a win. Very few actors get to work in this way, develop a character from scratch, no script, collaborate fully with the director, with all the heads of department, and the other actors, of course, when there were other actors.
You didn't notice them?
I didn't notice them. So it's kind of a win anyway to get your teeth into something like, I mean, Pansy's like.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there were no other films in existence, we would win everything.
Yeah.
Aquí Alicia tiene una pregunta.
Alicia has a question. Hi, over there on the left. Marianne, she talks a lot and she communicates, but she doesn't say anything. She just says, I'm tired. I'd like to ask you, Marianne, as well as Mike, that is to say, mental health. That son is depressed, and so is she, but the director puts the burden on her, the need of getting out of that hole to improve and get better. the sister adores her but doesn't help her. I'd like to talk about mental health and that way that she has of hiding the fact that she's tired because she doesn't receive anything from the rest of the people. She doesn't receive what she needs from the rest of the people in her surrounding. Thank you.
It's not a question.
It's a lot. I'm trying to break down the question within all of this. So if you could simplify it just a bit so that I can, because I heard the stuff about mental health and her talking a lot, etc.
Yeah, what is the question?
Whether they have a mental health problem which is not resolved just because she wants to move towards the light. She needs someone else. She needs the rest of the people to help her, but they can't and they don't.
Okay.
This is a widely experienced human condition. If you, as you do, you the questioner, watch the film and you think, what are the answers? Where is the help? She needs help. That's absolutely right. What we don't do in the film is really in any way come up with those answers, because millions of people experience this in one way or another, this kind of condition in their midst, in their families, in their relationships, etc., or in themselves. And so, for me, I would have to say that I think you said in your question, in the first version of your question, that Chantal, her sister, wants to help but doesn't. She might. You get the impression that she could. She'll try, maybe. But we want you to go away from the film with your own hopes and aspirations for Pansy and situation, rather than us simply bring it to a comfortable conclusion, if such a comfortable conclusion possibly could exist, which I don't think it does, within the confines of the film. So it's for you, in a way, it's for you to reflect on and relate to and hope for, but and it may be that Chantal will be helpful. She wants to, obviously, but you just don't know. And you know, it isn't a film. It isn't a documentary about mental health.
I know that there's still a couple of questions amongst the journalists, but in order to invite everyone who's here with us today representing the film, Georgina as well as Javier, I'd like to ask you, why get involved, embark on this film, Hard Truths? Georgina, she's a collaborator, a regular collaborator of Mike Leigh, and I imagine it's a professional continuation of the work and also personal. But you, Javier, why Media Pro Studios decides to embark on or get on board on a project like this? Yes, of course. Media Pro Studio, because the DNA of the studio and the company, we have always liked accompanying projects and produce projects where there were great artists involved. And for example, when attending markets and festivals, we had the possibility of participating. We met Gail and Georgina. We had the possibility of participating in the film. So we immediately said yes. And the truth, it was going to be shot in 2020, but we all know that year was a trifle complicated and we couldn't shoot it then, but we were able to finally make it. And it forms part of the DNA of our company, like Sorrentino, Woody Allen, and in this case, to be able to participate in this film with Mike and Georgina and with Marianne, it's a real privilege. Thank you very much. Georgina, would you like to add anything or to talk anything about the project?
Well, I've been working with Mike since 1992, so it's a long-term privilege, I have to say. But we were really, really grateful when the Media Pro Studios came on board back then and continued to stay with us until we were able to make the film, because the way that we work, there was no way we could have any COVID protocols or work with any restrictions. So we're very grateful that we were able to do it we shot in 2023.
Thank you.
I mean, I think it's important to say, talking about Media Pro, is that, I mean, Javier didn't mention this, but they came enthusiastically on board, having no idea what the film would be, none at all. It's trust. And all the films that I've made, that we've made, have been backed by people who backed us on that basis, with the exception of the historical films that we've made, where we were able to say a little bit about the main subject matter, the historical subject matter. But for this film, you know, you came on board blind and saying, okay, you're going to make a film, we're not going to interfere with it, which they didn't, and we trust you and we'll let you just get on with it. And I think that's really important, and to Javier's credit and the credit of Media Pro, and it has to be said, really.
Aquí Yolanda.
So, well.
Thank you very much.
Hola, buenos días.
Hi, good morning. I'd like to ask Marianne, the truth is, when I was watching the film, there's a moment, and you got me really nervous. I said, God, someone come along and help this woman, because I can't handle it anymore. We're just watching you. So therefore, there were moments, I think myself, as met many other people in our silence, we've encountered situations like this, and it's great that she could let go this way in different situations. But I'm going a bit further. Throughout the film, I'd like to know whether the character, you specifically, you've worked it from your childhood, because everything that happens during the film is a problem of childhood that doesn't appear in the film, but it appears in each and every one of those moments. People give you help, but you can't see it because you come from a childhood which had a lot of responsibility and always escaping towards something that you didn't know. Did you work on the character from the childhood standpoint that can't be seen in the film, but it's present all the way through? Thank you very much. I hope you got that question.
Yeah, I did. Yes, and yes. We work on the characters in a very detailed way. So by the time we come to rehearsing, shooting, there's a whole history. There's a whole bag of information, of stuff that you can just dip into. Whatever situation that character is put in, you have the tools to be able to act and react accordingly. You said childhood stuff. Yes, there was childhood stuff. There was a lot of stuff. But, you know, it's like when you go to the grocery store and you encounter somebody like Pansy. You want to say F off to them or what have you. You think that person must be crazy or what have you. But you don't sort of start going, oh, they must have had a difficult childhood. This must have happened. We don't do that. Maybe if we did, we'd have a bit more compassion for those people, but we don't. And I think that's the beauty of this character. It's not all explained for you in detail. There's not the sobbing scene whereby you find out that one thing that made her the way that she is. She's the way she is because of a lot of stuff.
But there are clues.
Yeah.
There are clues in the cemetery scene.
Yeah.
When she goes to the grave of her mother with her sister, you get some indication of what you're talking about. I think you asked, I may have misunderstood, but I think you asked Marianne whether she drew on her own childhood experiences. And I think you didn't.
Oh, no.
No.
Oh, no.
No.
Oh, no.
I don't think she has.
Because if she'd had those childhood experiences, she wouldn't be as good an actor as she is.
Ah.
No.
No.
¿Hay aquí una pregunta?
Yes, another question. First of all, congratulations for the film, and congratulations to Marianne, because I think it's the portrayal and character of the year, I believe. The film is divided in two parts. Clearly, one is full of dialogue, and the others are based basically on the gestures of the characters. When directing the actors, how did you address each of these two parts, Mr. Lee?
Well, in a way, this is a question that's already been discussed here today. You know, I don't differentiate. There's no difference between whether the character is talking or not talking, whether the character is a talkative character like Pansy or a non-talkative character like her husband or her son. I mean, it's all about the reality of what's going on in the moment and about the reality of the character and the way the character behaves. It's about what you're talking about is the behaviour of individual people. So I don't really... I mean, obviously, if we're talking about dialogue and that there is complex dialogue or any sort of dialogue, then a part of my job is to attend to that. How people talk, how language expresses itself, etc., etc. And that's ordinary dramatic decision-making. But when nothing is being said, then that's merely what's going on. I mean, you know, it's like a question would be, how do I deal differently with when they're indoors or when they're out in public? No difference at all. And indeed, the way I work with the actors would apply exactly the same to those many actors in this film who are brilliant at doing very small parts. You know, the woman in the furniture store, the couple in the furniture store, the people in the supermarket, the guy who wants a parking space. You know, we worked with all these guys and they all did character studies in the same way, sometimes involving dense dialogue and sometimes not.
Hay aquí una pregunta.
A question here. For the people who have a pansy in our lives, we have to deal with this issue. It's a very exciting and emotional film to see on the screen, so thank you very much for the film. And to see it represented, it's so real and with that empathy. So therefore, I'd like to know, why did you want to tell this story? And to the rest, why do you want to participate in this making of this story?
I take it from your question that you have a pansy in your life. Sort of. Well, that's why we made the film. In a nutshell. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. We all have pansies in our lives. You know, when we started making this film, we didn't know the film we were making. And then having seen it afterwards, what has been amazing is the amount of people who have said to me that either Pansy is their grandmother, auntie, sister, friend. And I think that's great that we've done something that resonates with people.
Aquí una pregunta más.
Yeah, I'm just interested because obviously you have such a unique way of working. I presume that sometimes, you know, you maybe hit a bit of a roadblock with this. Do you ever sort of go home at night and think, oh my goodness, this character, you know, you're not quite sure where it's going maybe, and maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing. I wonder, you know, how you get over that and whether the two of you, because you previously worked together, whether that helps you, you know, to maybe get more of a shorthand when it comes to those sorts of issues.
I mean, I think it's great to collaborate with people you've worked with before, but it's totally academic. I mean, I feel I have just as much creative success with people I've never worked with before, of whom there are, apart from Michelle Austin, who plays Chantel, all the main characters in this are actors I've never worked with before. And, you know, in 5 minutes, you forget that. It becomes, you know, organic and creative and collaborative. The first part of your question was, that was your question, wasn't it?
You know, whether when I was thinking really more for when the actors are developing these characters, whether they ever sort of think to themselves, oh God, I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this. If they ever hit a roadblock and sort of go home and have a bit of a crisis about it almost.
Listen.
And how you get over, and you know, how you work to get over that.
Well, it's trust, really, at the end of the day. But yeah, you do hit those roadblocks because you don't know what you're doing. You just know the stuff that is affecting your character. So what any of the other actors are doing outside of the scenes that they're in with you, you have no clue. You don't know what's going to happen the next day. So yeah, you go through those moments where you think, I don't know what I'm doing, you know, but it is about trusting the process.
But obviously, my responsibility is to, I have a job to do, which is to make a coherent film with a beginning, a middle and an end, and also to hit the deadline of being there to start shooting it when that's the plan, and to collaborate with the designer and the costume designer and the cinematographer in planning all those things. So obviously, the nearest, I think, that relates to what you're asking about is part of my own process. But my own process is no different from what happens to all painters of paintings, writers of novels, writers of plays, writers of poetry, musicians, sculptors, even potters. How many novelists have you heard say, well, I didn't know what was going to happen, and then suddenly it went in this direction or that direction? That is in the nature of the creative process, and that's what we do when we make such films as this one.
No sé si aquí delante, John, ¿tú tenías otra?
John, did you have another question? I would like now to ask a question to Mike Leigh about Pansy's character is very powerful, and everyone is focused towards this character because Marianne is with us. But the film, what drew my attention enormously was how you treated the supporting characters. For example, this decision of dedicating a small vignette to the life of each of the characters. Like, for example, we know the professional environments of the two nieces. For example, I'd like to know, when you wrote the screenplay, how did you make that decision of showing how the life each character has separately, so that we've got beyond of knowing the relationship to the leading actors, but separately how their lives are? I think that's a decision, a narrative decision that we're not very used to seeing. And it is true that in your cinema, in your films, you've done this before in the past, but to make this decision in 2024, I think that the supporting characters contribute to define the main character, and they don't have an entity of their own. Thank you very much.
I think it would be pointless, and I also think it will be impossible, to make a meaningful study of Pansy in a three-dimensional and real way if in some way you only were detailed about that character. I say that, though I have to also say that for me it would be just I suppose I would have to say by my nature, impossible to do that. Because for me, I mean, somebody asked me before whether I'm thinking about another film. And the truth is, I'm thinking about another film all the time, because I only get to walk down the street and I think of 10 films. Because for me, it's all about real people. So for me, it comes naturally to look at everybody in the film in the same three-dimensional way. So even this tiniest, I mean, the guy in the car park who goes mad and he wants a parking space, I mean, that is a three-dimensional study of a character. I mean, at one point he says, I went to school on this site, you know. That's a character detail. Now, it would be impossible and pointless to surround this very detailed study of this woman with very superficial, I don't know how it would be. I mean, I don't know what that would be. So for me, it's a natural thing to go out in that direction. I mean, the important thing is to know the degree to which you do it, the time that you should spend on it. You know, I mean, you could spend massive amounts of time you mentioned the daughter, the two daughters. I mean, you could go off and into much more detail about their world, their lives, their social lives, but then it would defocus the central objective of the film, of course. So for me, it's a natural thing to do. And it is about, but in the end, yes, it's a film about Pansy, but actually it's a film about people. And some of the questions we've been asked, it's a film about society. So the important thing is to look at everybody in the same depth and in the same, with the same sympathy and critical eye, however incidentally it may be to the main, what is apparently the main narrative.
No sé si...
I'm not too sure whether there are any further questions. There's one back here. I don't know how we're doing for time. Yes, one more. This will be the last question. Sorry.
It sounds very crazy, but watching the movie yesterday, I thought all the time about Poppy, the character from Sally Hawkins in Happy Go Lucky, because Poppy made us very angry with her happiness, and now Pansy makes us angry with her angriness. Since you told us that your movies are about society, what's the society that produces a woman like Poppy and a woman like Pansy? What's the difference between these two women?
Well, first of all, I have to say that you might find Poppy annoying or irritating. I don't. I think that's missing, to a great extent, missing the point of that film. Poppy is a positive person. Pansy is obviously, her condition makes her a negative person. Poppy is, I mean, at first, in the first few minutes of Happy-Go-Lucky, you could be forgiven for thinking this woman is going to be irritating. But once you get to know her, it's just not true. I mean, you really get to know somebody who is focused, together, generous, caring, and all of those things, and a good teacher. Now, that's what that's about. So in a way, I mean, a number of people have made a sort of comparative link between these two films. They are not, neither film is a celebration of unpleasant women. I hope both films are sympathetic, but obviously in entirely different ways.
Well, okay. Thank you very much for attending the press conference, and thank you very much to all of you representing Hard Truth, and lots of luck with the film. Thank you.